In the early 1990s, Japan was achieving something no other country had managed. Engineers at Mazda, Toyota, and Nissan were creating turbocharged engines with virtually no lag. Not just reduced lag, almost none at all. And they accomplished this without redesigning the turbocharger itself. Instead, they completely rethought how the entire turbo system operates. This innovation became known as sequential twin turbocharging. It powered some of the most iconic engines ever installed in production cars, the two JZ GTE in the Supra and the 13B REW in the RX-7. Today, these cars command six-figure prices at auctions. Collectors compete to own them, yet few people discuss the engineering that made them exceptional or why this particular turbocharging method was eventually phased out. This is that story, and it begins not with a car, but with a nation overflowing with wealth. To understand why Japan's automotive industry surged with innovation in the early 1990s, you have to look at the decade before it. Between 1985 and 1991, Japan experienced what economists now call the asset price bubble, a period of extraordinary and almost irrational economic expansion. Real estate and stock values skyrocketed so rapidly and to such extremes that they became detached from reality. The Nikkei stock index reached 38,915 yen at the end of 1989. Property prices in Tokyo increased by more than 300% in just 6 years. Japanese companies were flush with cash. Banks issued loans with minimal oversight, and the nation as a whole felt unstoppable. By any standard, it was one of the most remarkable economic booms ever seen in a developed country. For automakers, this translated into unprecedented engineering freedom. Research and development budgets expanded to levels unmatched anywhere else in the world at the time. Executives at Toyota, Nissan, Honda, and Mazda weren't focused on building inexpensive cars. They wanted to create vehicles superior to anything produced in Europe or America. Most importantly, their engineers had the financial backing to experiment without limits. Honda introduced an all-aluminum, Formula One, inspired mid-engine supercar, the NSX, developed with input from Ayrton Senna on handling. Nissan equipped the R32 Skyline GTR with four-wheel steering alongside its Atessa ETS all-wheel drive system. Mitsubishi incorporated active aerodynamics and four-wheel steering into the 3000 GT VR4. Even economy cars received advanced engineering. Toyota fitted a Corolla variant with 5 valves per cylinder and individual throttle bodies, allowing it to rev beyond 9,000 revolutions per minute, technology Ferrari wouldn't adopt until years later. However, the most intriguing and impactful engineering challenge these companies tackled was turbocharging. By the late 1980s, turbochargers had become the preferred method for extracting power from small displacement engines. But they came with a significant drawback, and Japan's engineers were determined to solve it. Before exploring the solution, it's important to understand the problem. A turbocharger uses exhaust gases to spin a turbine, which drives a compressor that forces additional air into the engine. More air means more fuel, and more fuel means more power. In theory, it's an efficient system, recovering energy from exhaust that would otherwise be wasted. The downside is responsiveness. The turbine requires exhaust pressure to spin, and that pressure builds with engine speed. At low RPM, there isn't enough exhaust flow to quickly spool the turbo. Press the throttle at low speeds, and there's little immediate response. Then suddenly, as the engine revs climb, boost arrives aggressively. This delay is known as turbo lag. In a performance car, it creates unpredictable power delivery at moments when precision matters most, exiting corners, overtaking on highways, or driving through winding mountain roads. The common engineering solution was to use a smaller turbocharger. Smaller turbos spool faster because their turbine wheels have less mass. That means quicker response and reduced lag. However, small turbos struggle at high RPM. They can't move enough air to sustain strong boost when the engine demands maximum airflow. The result is a narrow power band. You either get quick response with weak top-end performance or strong high-end power with sluggish response. It's a compromise. You have to choose one. Japanese engineers in the late 1980s rejected that compromise. They wanted both instant response and strong top-end power. Their solution was sequential twin turbocharging, using two turbochargers of different sizes operating in sequence, each optimized for a specific part of the rev range. A small turbo would handle low RPM response, while a larger turbo would deliver power at higher RPM. The real challenge was making the transition between the two feel seamless, and that proved extremely complex. The first mass-produced Japanese application of sequential twin turbocharging came from Mazda, in a car that exceeded all expectations. The FD-RX-7, launched in 1991, was built around Mazda's rotary engine, the 13B REW. This was a 1.3-liter twin-rotor Wankel engine, a size that sounds almost absurdly small for a performance vehicle. Rotary engines have their own unique characteristics, but the key point here is that they produce power at very high RPM. They thrive on revs. Pairing them with a large, slow-spooling turbo is a poor match. The engine remains stuck at the low end of its power band, waiting for boost. And when the turbo finally engages, the power surge can be abrupt and difficult to control. Mazda engineers had been developing sequential turbo systems since the mid-1980s, first implementing them in the luxury Yunos Cosmo in 1990 before refining the concept for the RX-7. The 13B REW used two similarly sized turbos arranged sequentially. At low RPM, all exhaust gases were directed to the primary turbo. This focused flow allowed the smaller turbo to spool quickly, producing boost between roughly 1,800 and 2,500 revolutions per minute, much earlier than a conventional single turbo. As engine speed increased toward 4,500 revolutions per minute, a valve gradually redirected exhaust flow to the secondary turbo, bringing it up to speed in the background. At full transition, both turbos operated together, pulling the engine smoothly to its 8,000 revolutions per minute redline. The result was remarkable. The engine produced 255 horsepower from just 1.3 liters, with a power delivery that felt almost like a naturally aspirated engine, smooth, linear, and responsive at any throttle input. The RX-7 could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 5 seconds, rivaling cars with significantly larger engines. More importantly, its power delivery made it highly controllable in corners and demanding driving situations, providing immediate response instead of delayed acceleration. However, achieving this performance required immense complexity. The vacuum system that managed the transition between the two turbos relied on 67 individual hoses, a dense and intricate network that Mazda technicians nicknamed the rat's nest. Every hose had to function perfectly. If even one failed due to heat or wear, the system could malfunction. The secondary turbo might not engage correctly, transitions could become uneven, or boost control could fail altogether.